Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and taking time out of your mornings. My name is Mike Grove. I'm one of the founders here at Stardog, SVP engineering, other cool stuff in my title, but I guess founder is the one that matters the most. I'm really excited to be with everyone today to talk about trustworthy AI systems and what it takes to build them. Uh, Surprise, surprise, it involves knowledge graphs. I've been working in this space for 25 years. I got started in the late 90s. I had the fortune of taking a class that exposed me to AI agents and what would eventually become called knowledge graphs. I just needed credits. I did not know I was getting a career. So I'm pretty excited to be here with you guys today to talk about some of those experiences, talk about Stardog, and talk about how we can use Gen AI to build trustworthy AI solutions that solve problems in our enterprises. So to level set, just do a quick agenda. We're going to actually start off with a demo because demos are cool. People like seeing demos. That might be why a lot of you are joining us today to see something cool. So we'll start off with that. Sadly, we'll switch over to some slides. We'll go through some of the how and the what of what we saw, why knowledge graphs are particularly well fit for building these trustworthy AI systems. And then we're actually going to build one together. We're going to cap it off with another demo because, again, demos are great. We're going to build a knowledge graph together. It's not going to require code or programming or any technical skills whatsoever. We're going to push some buttons together and we're going to make a knowledge graph. And we're going to ask a pretty sophisticated question and get a pretty sophisticated answer. It's be very exciting. I encourage people to ask questions along the way. You can use the Zoom Q&A feature. I may break depending on how many questions we have in the middle, but we will certainly make sure there is time for questions at the end. So without further ado, let's jump over to a demo. I should get out of the slides here. And we're going to go right over to Stardog Designer so we can see a knowledge graph kind of behind the scenes. So this is what this knowledge graph looks like. It's a tariff use case because tariffs are kind of relevant right now. So we can see our data model, also called an ontology. Very popular thing people are talking a lot about. We'll talk more about ontologies later. We can see the different data sources that make up my knowledge graph. Databricks, Snowflake, Postgres. This looks like something that exists in your enterprise. I can jump right over to Explorer. I can see that ontology, that data model front and center, and I can explore my knowledge graph this way. But for now, we're going to look at trustworthy AI through the lens of VoiceBox. So we can see that same knowledge graph. Some of my colleagues have made some questions that were already relevant to me in my use case, so I'll go ahead and fire one of these off. VoiceBox will quickly consider what information from that knowledge graph is relevant, go fetch it from the knowledge graph, and synthesize an answer. I get a short version of the answer here in the chat, and I get kind of a long form version of the answer over here in the knowledge panel. Any text or any tables, associated with the text are right here, easy for me to view and page through. Most importantly, front and center are the types of things that are involved in this answer here at the top and the data sources involved. So I know where this data came from. Showing your work is a key component of trustworthy AI. And if I want to dig in and see how this came together, I can see the query that was issued in this case. One query was issued, and for those of us who are a little more technically minded, we can go ahead and even see the query code that was executed. We even have a nice little window where I can follow up. What is my best option for non-US suppliers and what material can I have? So it's further deep dive analysis on the answer itself. So I don't have the context, which I don't have to go anywhere else. This is based on this exact data that was retrieved from the knowledge graph. So very quick and easy for me to get an answer to my question. I'm going to jump over to one more example. You see here is a different use case. This is a customer 360 e-commerce type scenario. This is a little more involved use case. So the scenario here is I'm like a product analyst or a business analyst, but I'm very much not a data scientist, but I need to perform some data science. I need to do some analytics on my data. So we can ask VoiceBox to go ahead and do that. And of course, I think I forgot to enable think mode. Oh, no, there it goes. So I can see what it's doing as it's doing it. So I get full transparency into what VoiceBox is doing. So it's looking at my knowledge graph, trying to figure out what data it needs. It's issuing queries. This is data it's using. And now it's going to go ahead and write some code because it needs to do that analysis that I asked for. And remember, I can't write code. I'm not a data scientist. I'm going to let VoiceBox do that for me, but I'm going to have the transparency and the traceability. The VoiceBox is going to show me the code that it wrote, so I can understand what's going on. You can see some of the code just scrolled by here. VoiceBox now is moving on to doing linear regression, so it figured out what kind of statistical analysis to do on its own. You can come up, it's compiling the final answer here, making its prediction for 2021, and I should get a nice little answer here in a moment. Of course, this always takes longer when I am on live. You see my linear regression code just scrolled by, and we'll get the nice overview here in a second. Let me just get that to redraw. So we can see the analysis here. Gives a prediction for 2021, and then again, all those reasoning steps showing its work along the way, all the code that was written. That's transparency and traceability. This is what makes up these trustworthy AI systems. This is what you get for building on top of a knowledge graph. So let's go back over to our slides and go ahead and talk about, as engineers, I had a lot of my engineer friends are on today. We're not building untrustworthy systems. We're not trying to, at least, but I mean, this is hard. I'm sure everyone here is using some sort of AI tools. My engineering friends, we're all probably using some sort of coding tools. They're all great. I don't trust them. You shouldn't trust them either. I eventually get to some very good code that I'm confident in, but it takes a lot of my oversight because I don't trust that AI system. And these are as good as they get. These are hard systems to build. Hallucinations, the thing that we talk about a lot, was talked a lot about in the world. Obvious challenges to your business, brand damage, compliance risk of your chatbots going rogue. But as engineers, having a system that almost works against us, it could lie, it could confabulate, actively believe its own falsehoods, just start exhibiting different behaviors. They become the ultimate, it worked for me machine. So these are very challenging systems to build. And even if you get around the problems that hallucinations provide, the physics of the situation are against you, right? We're trying to build these systems. How do we tell an LLM what to do? How do we get it to follow our instructions? We give it a prompt. Well, every token we put in that prompt slows it down and it costs more money. So that's a double whammy. You're driving up your cost to provide the service, and you're providing a worse user experience. So those tokens really matter. This is why context engineering is very hot right now. You have to put the right tokens into those contexts. But because of cost and performance concerns, you want to put as few tokens in as you can. And it's not like you can get away with fewer tokens and bigger, better models. The bigger, better models are not that much better. We've all been underwhelmed by the most recent big model release. And so it's not much better than the last one. And Apple, they famously had their paper that proved that those AI reasoning models, they don't really reason. They don't think much harder. They don't do any better. So the bigger models aren't going to bail you out. We have a ton of engineering pressure to use a small model with as few tokens as we can. But somehow we have to get like 95% accuracy for a task. And still, that's not very good. Like, what SaaS service does your enterprise subscribe to that's got 1.9 of reliability? Exactly zero, I promise you. And then the math is, you could be happy about 95%, and 95% is fine for some use cases. Submitting PTO requests or figuring out how many days of leave, sure, you can do that with 95% accuracy. But not enterprise tasks, not certainly 5 of these in a row. 5 tasks at 95% success, you're looking at a C average. That's about 75% success rate. Add another 5 or 10, 20, you're looking at almost single digits. This is not enterprise reliability. And what enterprise workflows are shorter than 5 steps? Not many. So this is tremendously tough as engineers, right? We got a system that may lie to us, and we're being asked to use as small model as possible, with as few tokens as possible, with the best performance as possible, with as close to human level intelligence as possible. Build something that our enterprises can trust. It's hard, very, very hard. And the tools that we've had have at hand haven't exactly given us the foundation for building these trustworthy systems that enterprises can take advantage of Gen AI. Gartner and the like are talking about knowledge graphs. Obviously, I mentioned knowledge graphs are the key. And we'll get to that in a second, but why not what we've got now? Why not fine tuning? Originally, I think a lot of people thought, well, we can just put our enterprise knowledge directly into these foundational models and that'll solve the problem. Well, you're still subject to the challenge of hallucinations, and there's no sidestepping that with that approach. As a vendor like Stardog, it's very difficult to get custom models through IT security. That could be a non-starter. And if you're on the other side and you don't have to worry about that, there's still pretty significant capital requirements, data requirements, hardware requirements that is not necessarily going to be a good fit. And then there's RAG. Everyone's, I'm surely familiar with RAG. RAG is fantastic. It's led many successful first generation generative AI projects into production. But we have to be real about what RAG is. It's slightly better enterprise search. And we needed better enterprise search. We've needed it for a very long time. So I'm very excited that RAG has come along and provided this capability. But fundamentally, that's all it is. And we can see that by the fact that it only considers textual data. Go to Anthropic's website and you look at their Claude stack. Claude's as impressive as any generative AI technology at all. Their Claude stack, text data only. They don't consider any structured sources. Everyone here works at a big enterprise. Your data teams, that's all structured data. All those dashboards, that's all structured data behind them. So how are we going to build a trustworthy AI system that doesn't use any of the data that our enterprises trust? You're not going to. And Graph RAG doesn't change the situation. It's just RAG with better marketing, slightly better accuracy, but still the same challenges. Still doesn't consider most of the enterprise data, certainly not the most important enterprise data. And then you have, not to mention relational solutions, but simple graph databases, simple RDF-based systems, vector databases. No, they're not good enough. Even those RDF-based systems and the simple graph databases that pretend like they do knowledge graphs, or the knowledge part of knowledge graphs, the ontologies, they all start with the same precondition. Step 0 is go to your entire world of enterprise data, take a subset of it, make a copy and put it into our system. So you're going to start out building an enterprise system that's going to power important decision-making with out-of-date and incomplete data. No, you're not. No one's asking for that. So it's not good enough. So don't waste your time with kind of these old generation approaches. Knowledge graphs provide the appropriate foundation for powering generative AI in the enterprise for 2 reasons. They can deal with this through context and connectivity. And we'll talk a bit more about what that means in a second. But this is what your enterprise looks like today, right? All these little circles, you can think of, these are dashboards, right? And in those circles, that's a data team and infrastructure, and those magnified, and we can get some insights for our enterprise in those circles. They're often aligned with differences like the customer 360 use case we were going through before. They're aligned to our different areas of business, and we have some insight. We can get some trustworthy answers right smack dab in the bullseye of some of these areas. But holy cow, look how much is not covered. Look how much insight we can't access because we have no visibility. The data's there, we just can't get to it. And look at how little overlap we have in the major areas of concern, the things that we care about the most, that we've taken the time to make these little islands of insight. Practically no overlap. It's very hard for us to do what we need, what enterprises are asking for us to do with this generative AI technology, is in this mess, go find that proverbial needle in the haystack. Find that root cause that's contributing to some problem or the one thing that unlocks value for the business or for our customers. Find that one thing and then pull that thread all the way across the business, across all the different relevant systems and processes and areas of concern, collect all the relevant information, put it in the hands of the right person at the right time. or increasingly put it in the hands of the right AI system at the right time. But being able to have this complete picture, this is what knowledge graphs enable. I said they enable that through context and connectivity. What does that mean and how does that work? This should be a little more hockey stick. This is exponential. Connectivity powers this. It's the network effect of the connections. And it's easy to illustrate. We just think through this customer 360 case we had. So we have just that product catalog. We cannot ask very sophisticated questions about our product catalog. What products do we have? How many do we have? Are any of them blue? As soon as we had a second, purchase of those products, it's a lot more interesting questions. What's the most popular product? The least popular? What's the trend for those products over the last 5 years? How about those products and the support requests they receive? How about different versions of those products we get from different suppliers located in different geographies, subject to different concerns? You had that third, fourth, fifth, 10th. Eventually, you start considering the whole enterprise. The connectivity of those systems drives the complexity of the questions you can answer. And that is directly correlated with the value provided by answering those questions. And enterprises are trying to live all the way out here on the right. We solved a lot of the stuff here on the left. That's what those little blue circles were in that last diagram. But now we need to move out on the right. We need to get up that hockey stick curve of value, and we can only do that through connectivity. Connectivity is hard, though. All those different areas, retail, shipping, logistics, they've all got different ways they talk about their data. So you have to understand the context. You have to understand how the data is stored, what it means to the business, what people mean when they talk about it, and what that data means as it exists in the world. We started off with our tariffs example. There's a lot of world impact that are outside of the walls of your enterprise that needs to be taken into account. That's a lot of context. So it's understanding that context that unlocks that connectivity. And it's moving up that connectivity curve that moves us up the enterprise value curve. And knowledge graphs enable that by providing that foundation of context and connectivity and lets us create these trustworthy systems. So at this point, if you came in knowing about knowledge graphs, I'm certain you've said this at some point. If not, a coworker said it to you. If you came in unfamiliar with knowledge graphs, you're almost certainly thinking this because you weren't familiar with them. I don't know how to build a knowledge graph. And if you're a little bit familiar, you've probably heard, I've mentioned it a few times, the ontology word. The key providing that context. I don't know how to build an ontology. We can't build ontologies. We're not ontologists. None of that's true. You can build ontologies. You have ontologists. It's you, it's your coworkers. I promise you, no one knows your business better than the people who work at your business. Your ontology should reflect your business, how you operate, how you work, what you mean when you talk about your business and your data. That's your ontology. So the way to build knowledge graphs to power these generative AI applications, provide trustworthy AI through knowledge graphs. You institutionalize your knowledge in these ontologies. You do not write them down in arcane syntax. You do not need any special skills. You write user stories. Now, anyone coming from engineering product background, you've certainly written a user story. They're pretty simple. As an XYZ, as a user of this software, I need to XYZ to ABC to unlock some value. Product engineering teams groom that. They take it apart. They figure out the different parts and pieces, the who, what, the where, the when, the why, to make that happen so they can provide XYZ to unlock value ABC for their users. It's the exact same thing here. We're going to do that, except I guarantee you've already written down your ontology. You have these user stories. There isn't a business in operation today that doesn't have their goals written down, doesn't have their most important problems written down. This is business 101. I guarantee you this stuff's written down. So it's just a matter of bringing it forward and promoting it and making it the center of your knowledge graph. That seemed a little abstract. Let's walk through it in slides. And then we're just going to do this. And we're going to create a knowledge graph. We're going to create it from 5 questions. So here's a user story, BCBS 239. I know there's some people from the financial services domain here today. So this is probably very familiar to you, but for a lot of you, it's not. But I'm certain you see the ontology here. It's the data for the bank about their liquidity positions, exposures, counterparties, currencies, jurisdictions. They care about risk data aggregation. They want to manage liquidity and risk. So I've got ideas of what the things they care about and what they want to do with them. I mean, that's half the battle. That's what your ontology describes, the things that you care about as a business, what they mean and where they are. We can groom this. We can take it apart into some additional questions that teases out more of the use case, more of the things that we care about in our world. You take one of these questions and we break them up, basically just underlining the nouns. The nouns become concepts in our world. Then we can very quickly scribble lines between them, connect those all up. We call it sketch ontology. I know many of my engineering friends here today, we start at whiteboards. I think most people, when they're starting projects, start by sketching out the idea. Knowledge graphs don't need to be any different. So we'll sketch out your ontology from your user stories, from your questions. And it'll be custom fit for you, for your use case, for how you talk about your data. So you already know how to use it. There's no training. You've been talking about your business for years. If you want to make the knowledge graph bigger, you want to make it more sophisticated, you want to be able to answer more questions, you add more stories, you write more problem statements. It doesn't have to be hard. Like I said, we're already writing all these things down. We write down our goals, we write down our problems. We make to-do lists. And we just turn that into ontology. We turn it into a knowledge graph, and we can change how our businesses operate. So let's go ahead and see how that's done. I'm going to jump over into Stardog Designer here again. And this is starting a project. I am on a webinar and I am a supply chain analyst. I've done my preamble. I'm going to get some questions here. Go ahead, one by one. I thought about prepping this, but the whole process usually goes so quickly that I wouldn't have taken up all the time of my demo. So I apologize if this may be a little tedious, but if for nothing else, it proves that this is no theater. So 5 questions, like I said, that describe my area, supply chain. I'm going to go ahead and generate my bare bones project here. Open up the settings, I can see my questions. Let's move Zoom out of the way. All right. Now I need to add some data. That's all I have to do. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use MySQL here. Oops. And the Northwind data set, common test and demo data set, everyone may have heard of before. I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to select the whole thing. Every single table you can see these are live connections to that relational source. I can see the data. All right, I'm just say create map. Yes, please create me the knowledge graph from all of that stuff. So it's going to go ahead and it's going to think a little bit. What VoiceBox is doing is it's interrogating each of those sources, sending us some SQL queries, getting the schemas, looking at the primary and foreign keys, trying to understand how that data is related with respect to those questions that I entered. So boom, let me relay that, do a relay out. So we got a nice proto knowledge graph. It created that data model for me, associated it with all of my data. But see here, I can use VoiceBox. They're not the best labels. Order and order detail, product is related to order detail via the word product. It's not very helpful, so I can just go ahead and ask VoiceBox to do a better job on the labeling. So it'll think about it, it'll look at my model, it'll reconsider my questions and try and make something that's a little more human friendly. There we go. You can see updated all of those labels. These look much better. As a human reading them, I have a much better idea. So I can go ahead and just accept all those changes. And I have basically just now got a knowledge graph. So let's go ahead and publish. I've tried this a few times. Hope the fourth time is still the charm. And we're going to enable voice box. I don't need to download anything when I'm done. I'm going to use all the defaults here and we're going to go ahead and publish. So this is actually going to take hopefully about a minute, hopefully not 3, because I have to vamp for the whole time while it's going. What's happening right now is it's taking what are called mapping. So like I said, it looked at those data sources, it figured out primary and foreign keys, it created that data model, and it kind of smushed those two things together, that model and those mappings. So that's how the knowledge graph is able to access all of that structured information that's logically part of the knowledge graph, but not physically stored in the knowledge graph. It's indexing that schema that was built so that when questions come in, it's able to do relatively sophisticated semantic parsing to understand the intent of those questions. So I said context is key. There's got to be able to compile that context and understand the questions as it goes. And then as an aside for everyone here who's a practitioner who's hoping to build stuff like this, everything that you've seen, first demo, second demo, these are all available on all of our APIs, MCP, LangChain, all that good stuff. I love our interfaces. I'm very proud of the engineering team that has built them. I think they're great, but I can appreciate that you may need to integrate into your enterprise ecosystem on your own. All this is available for easy integration through APIs. All right, of course, this takes longer than planned. Oh, here we go. I just had to think about it for a second. So go ahead and we're going to fire this back up. We'll go back into Stardog Explorer. It'll take a second. Now, here's that data model we just created together. So I can see it all nice and easy, and voice box is right here. I'm the present everywhere can be to help me. The question, so just level set. We pushed some buttons. We had some questions and some data. There's no fine training. There's no fine tuning. There's nothing to set it up for this question. What is the name of the most used supplier for any shipper who shipped orders placed by customers in Brazil, but those orders were handled by employees not in Brazil for products in the produce category? Touches every single thing in this schema that we created over here. Every single thing. So what's happening in VoiceBox is understanding the intent of this question. It's figuring out which data in that MySQL database is relevant. It is writing one or more SQL queries to go fetch that data from the source and then bring it back and try and figure out the answer to this question based on the information that it retrieved from the knowledge graph. It's usually a lot faster. I've said that several times today. Of course, when I'm on the air, everything goes slowly, but it'll come back here in a second and tell me that a chippy distributor named G'day Mate is our one supplier who's handling orders in Brazil with employees not in Brazil. Well, while that's thinking here in VoiceBox, we'll just jump back over to the VoiceBox, or in Explorer, we'll jump over to the VoiceBox interface and we can see sorry about that. Clicked the wrong thing. I'm just struggling here. All right. So we can see our answer here. We can see G'day Mate. We can see all the different things that were involved in this answer, all the different data sources. That took a little longer than expected, but I think a lot of people here write SQL queries. When was the last time you wrote a SQL query over 8 tables? Over a database you had never seen before in less than a minute. We can see the visual explanation of that query. We can see the code of that query. Full confidence and traceability in our answer from start to finish. So this is what knowledge graphs enable, how we build these trustworthy AI systems. And we build them quickly and easily. This is a really sophisticated question. I know it took a few seconds to answer, but that's the kind of questions our business are trying to answer. We can answer them with knowledge graphs. So we are stuck the landing on time. I'm just going to jump here. We'll skip the recap slide because I'd like to make sure we have plenty of time for questions because There seems to be at least a lot in the chat. But before we get into the question answering, I want to mention that we're going to do a tutorial. It'll be a more in-depth version of what you just saw, where we're going to do this together. So it'd be hands-on. That's in about 6 weeks. Space is limited because it's a hands-on activity. So I encourage everyone, if what you saw here today was interesting, you want to get started, can absolutely start now at stardog.com. Get started with Stardog Cloud. But I encourage you to sign up for our follow-on webinar so we can do this together. So at this point, holy moly. All right. There's a lot of chat and a lot of questions. All right, so first one is this just structured data? What about unstructured and semi-structured forms? So that's a great question. I figured someone would answer that because I definitely was strongly talking about structured data and the importance of structured data. And then in our demo, we saw just MySQL. Stardog itself can handle both structured and unstructured. We have a system we call Safety RAG, which isn't RAG at all, but it's branding. And it's able to deal with unstructured sources. It transforms them into structured data. So it does information extraction and entity recognition to pull that information out and enrich your knowledge graph. And for semi-structured, things like Mongo, Redis, Elasticsearch, Stardog's backend can already talk to those. It treats them as structured data. So from that point of view, there's only two kinds, structured and unstructured for us. Next one, how much effort, time, money, and skills goes into standing up a useful ontology and maintaining it? Well, if you do it the old way a lot, and it's not worth it. If you go the route that I strongly recommend, which is through just documenting your business problems through user stories, it is much easier to both create and maintain the ontology and have an ontology that actually fits your use case. What I see a lot with these ontology creation efforts, whether they're community efforts or just internal efforts, is they're made in theory. They're not aligned to the real world. They're not actually aligned to the business. So they become very difficult for the business to use. And then businesses form the wrong idea about ontologies and knowledge graphs generally. So the ontology exists. It's in your organization. You just have to write it down. Next, is it possible to take the output a step further to generate long-form documents, slides, presentations according to predefined templates? Yeah, absolutely. That was part of my point of trying to point out that everything that you saw in Stardog is available from API. So yeah, you will certainly see all of those things coming into our product, but at the same time, our product has been built so we ourselves can build those things. So you could build them too, particularly if you have some technology that you're already using for slide creation. It would be very trivial to be able to hook up the output from VoiceBox, all that rich, curated, trustworthy data, and pipe into the slide so it actually uses the correct, up-to-date, accurate information that you're pulling out of the knowledge graph. Then there's a lot in the chat. I don't know if we will get to all of the chat. Any questions that are in the chat, we'll do one or two more here that are in the Q&A. But I promise everyone here, if we don't get to your question live, I will make sure that we get to it offline. You'll get an email from us. You'll also be getting the slides and link to the recording as a leave behind. But just trying to be mindful of the time here. We'll do two more questions. One, how advanced is the ontology editor? So asking about designer. I will say not very advanced, and that's by design. These ontologies do not need to be extremely sophisticated to actually provide value to these organizations. That's another pitfall that I see when people try and build knowledge graphs. They try to build these very complex ontologies that again, are not really tied to the problems the business has or how the business thinks or works. They're just cool ontologies. So designer is limited in that respect because we're opinionated, I think is a better way to put it. They are simple models meant to let you get on with the business of building knowledge graphs and not get bogged down with what it means to have a restriction on a property, because that almost never is helpful. And then last one, what is the best way to build RDF-based GraphRag applications? How do we prove the accuracy of Sparkle generation, especially with a large ontology? Well, first thing is to not use GraphRag. That would be the best way you can improve your accuracy, because RAG just isn't going to cut it. If for nothing else, it doesn't have most of the useful information that you need, but also lacks that context and connectivity really that you need to effectively build queries, deal with these large ontologies. Businesses are big. There are a lot of things that they care about. And two parts of the business may use different words to talk about the exact same thing. So there's no one size fits all ontology, even for a single organization. And with that, I think we will wrap things up. But I really appreciate all the time and consideration from everyone today. Just a ton of good questions. So many people were able to join. I'm very excited. As I said, we will send slides and the leave behind, so you have a link to the presentation. You can try this all out on stardog.com, and we can do this together again in 6 weeks, build a knowledge graph from scratch on a hands-on tutorial that I'm really looking forward to. So thank you everyone again for your time. I'm Mike Grove from Stardog. Good luck building your trustworthy AI systems.